Now, it might not feel like it after the disappointment of that 1-1 draw at Luton Town, but Liverpool really have had a strong start to this new season. They're flying high in the Premier League in third place and only 3 points off top spot. They're going well in the Europa League and the League Cup as well. And you only have to compare to last season when they made a really disastrous start. The position is so different this time around. There was 11 points to leaders Arsenal at this stage of last season, which shows you how poor Liverpool have been. So Jurgen Klopp has really turned things around at Anfield this season with the changes he's made over the summer. But that said, there's still always something for fans to complain about, isn't there? There's always things for journalists like me to pick out and criticise. And there has been one theme that's really emerged in this opening part of the season, one aspect of Liverpool's play that not everybody has really got on board with, and that is, of course, the use of Alexis Mac Allister at summer signing in the number 6 role. Now, I would say this is definitely not being the plan for him when he was signed for the club, because you could see that in pre-season. Obviously, there was only a need for a holding midfielder or a vacancy opening up in that position because of the sudden departures of Fabinho and Jordan Henderson. That wasn't something Liverpool had planned for. And you can also see that Alexis Mac Allister wasn't Jurgen Klopp's go-to man in the holding role initially, because in pre-season in those games he actually tried Trent Alexander-Arnold in that position, and he also tried Curtis Jones there before he eventually settled on using Alexis Mac Allister. But he has become the firm favourite to start in that position since the season started, and as I say, that has attracted a little bit of criticism, including recently after the Luton game. So what I thought is I'd jump on and have a look at the numbers and look at the case for Alexis Mac Allister as number 6 and sort of examine whether really has he been as bad as some people are saying. Is he actually doing a better job or not? So we'll have a look at that and really examine it in detail. And I want to start first of all really with the Luton game. I think one of the big criticisms that came out of the Luton game, and one of the reasons that Alexis Mac Allister was sort of a lightning rod for that criticism, was around the Luton goal, the opening goal of the game. Now, you have to say, when Luton hit Liverpool on the counter there, he does look really slow. He gets outpaced by Taith Chong, and it's really, really noticeable. And that, it leads to Liverpool conceding. A quicker player can get back there and snuff that counter attack out, but Mac Allister just doesn't have the pace to do it, and that looks really bad on him. And again, I think it's one of the reasons he was criticised. But I think that moment itself is maybe worth looking at from a sort of slightly different perspective. So for me, from the manager, I would maybe ask the question, why is a player like Mac Allister, someone who really lacks pace, why is he being given a protective role when you're taking an attacking set piece? Would it not be better to have a faster player there? That's a role we usually see Andy Robertson in, for example, and he usually does that quite well. And Trent Alexander-Arnold, when he's not the one taking the set piece, can occasionally be in that recovery role as well. So it's obviously something that Jurgen Klopp prizes in that position, is to have someone with pace in protecting the play, and he didn't do it on this occasion. He's asked Mac Allister to do it, and you saw the shortfalls of that at Luton. As I say, he was so easily outpaced. But again, I think that's something you can maybe criticise the manager for, but it's not the sole reason Liverpool concede in that position either. There's a weak challenge from Harvey Elliott in the build-up as Luton get it away from the corner, which really kind of went under the radar. And I will say about Harvey Elliott in his game at Luton, I thought he was massively impressive when he came on. He gets the assist, obviously, that Diaz equalises from. I thought his all-round play really put Liverpool back on the front foot. He was one of the better players in terms of picking holes in Luton's defence, and as I say, he gets that assist. But I thought in that moment, he showed real weakness in the challenge, and that really is what exposes Mac Allister's lack of pace. He can't get back after that ball breaks there. He's got absolutely no chance of keeping up with Chong, and that is something the manager will maybe want to look at. I saw Sam Maguire on Twitter, if you don't follow him, he's a really good analyst of the game and of Liverpool in particular, said that of the players around Mac Allister, they only won 5 out of 24 duels at Luton, and that Elliott one for me was really the sort of most egregious example really of that protection in front of Mac Allister not being there. And maybe there could be a case to be made that wider structural issues in the team are causing Mac Allister a lot of problems, because if you are that holding midfielder and things go wrong in front of you, it's not always possible to fight the fires. And we saw that even with Fabinho when he was in his prime. He wouldn't have been able to keep pace with Chong either. So again, that sort of speaks to the idea that Liverpool aren't doing things perfectly in front of Mac Allister, and he ends up being the one who looks a little silly. Now, I want to look a little bit at the wider picture now, away from that Luton game, and seeing how Mac Allister's playing generally. And I thought a good way to do that was to look at the numbers in terms of how he's playing so far. And I thought a good comparison really to see how he's doing in the Premier League would be to look at other lone sixes or people who are deployed in a lone number 6 role at other clubs around Liverpool or who have similar aims to Liverpool this season. So the 3 that I settled on were Declan Rice at Arsenal, Rodri at Manchester City and Bruno at Newcastle. They're 3 players who are being asked to do broadly similar things in the number 6 role. And to be honest, I had a look at the statistics and they actually kind of surprised me, I'll be honest, particularly in defensive measures, which is an area where Mac Allister is being criticised. Everyone knows he's so good on the ball, he's able to use it really well and really smartly, but it's the defensive side of the game where he's perhaps had the most criticism this season, and incredibly, he actually shows up remarkably well in this regard. Now I'm just going to throw up a table here so you guys can see it of the statistical measures that I looked at. And I think it paints really a kind of surprising picture really. You look at tackles 1 per 90, Mac Allister leading the way there with 1.53 tackles 1 per 90 minutes in the Premier League so far this season. Recoveries, again, he leads the way, 7.35. He's ahead of Rodri again on that regard. I think Rodri is the one who you'd say is the outstanding candidate out of these. And still Mac Allister is outpacing in some of these numbers. The same goes for tackles plus interceptions made over 90 minutes. Again, massively impressive from Mac Allister there with 4.18. And passes blocked is another one where this is what you want your midfielders to be doing, is blocking off passing lanes, is intercepting the ball in that way, and 1.94 per 90 for Mac Allister. The only statistic that I pulled out that he doesn't actually lead the way on is his tackle win percentage, and he still comes out of that incredibly well. Now Rodri, as I say, out on his own in that regard, 58.3. I think he is a remarkable player, and we all know that's so key to Manchester City, would really hurt them if he got injured. But Mac Allister's tackle win percentage is still alongside some of his other peers there. You see 47.2%. Declan Rice is only marginally ahead of that, and everyone would say he's had a good start to life at Arsenal. He was so impressive for West Ham before that as well. And Bruno as well is lagging behind Mac Allister in that regard. So I think you can look at those three other players there who are being asked to do a similar role to Mac Allister, and he's actually outstripping them in a lot of statistics, which I think shows you that he's probably doing a better defensive job than a lot of us would maybe expect or perhaps perceive. Perhaps that because you've got in your head that okay, he's not a natural in that role. If he does lose the odd tackle, which happens to all of his peers, as I pointed out there, that's tackle win percentages. You can't win the ball every time, but maybe sometimes when it happens to Mac Allister, it sort of sticks in the mind a little bit, and that's particularly because he doesn't have that recovery pace. He can be made to look sort of a little bit daft at times, you would say, maybe, and maybe that's why we've not perceived that the numbers would be quite as good as they are. But as I say, as good as anyone in the league really in that role in the defensive measures, and we already know how good he is on the ball. Now, in terms of Liverpool's overall play, I think another thing that's worth pointing out is that, look, if Liverpool had a big hole in the midfield, as some people are maybe suggesting that they do, and they have a real massive issue in the holding midfield role, then maybe we would see that in their underlying statistics, and the fact that maybe they'd be in a little bit of a false position in the Premier League. But it doesn't quite bear out in the numbers either. I think Liverpool, in terms of their expected goals, are expected to be third in the league at the moment, which is exactly where they are. So they're in a really true position relative to their underlying statistics that they're showing. They've also, in terms of goals conceded, they've got the third best record in terms of that. Liverpool have conceded 10 in the Premier League so far this season, and the only two teams who've outstripped that are Arsenal, who've conceded 9, and City, who've only conceded 8. So not a huge difference there, and again shows you that Liverpool, they wouldn't be this good if they did have this real problem in such an important position. So I think that's something to really factor into your thinking, is that Liverpool are actually doing maybe better than you think in terms of that, and that Mac Allister is doing a lot better than you think in terms of that. Now, another element that comes into this discussion as well, and something I want to talk about, is the idea that some of the potential alternatives to Alexis Mac Allister are sort of held up as maybe saviours, and they would do such a better job than Mac Allister if were they to come in. I think one of the most prominent of those is Caicedo, who obviously Liverpool missed out to Chelsea in terms of trying to sign him. They put in that massive bid at the end of the window but couldn't get a deal over the line, and a big miss for Liverpool, because I think he's a great player. But The one thing I would say about Caicedo is that a lot of his good work that he's done in his career so far, short career so far, has been in a double pivot. That's exactly how he's being used at Chelsea as well, alongside Enzo Fernandez. So he wouldn't have that luxury were he to come to Liverpool. He would be asked to do what Alexis Mac Allister is doing at the moment, operate in a lone pivot. And would we perhaps see him getting a little bit exposed in the way Mac Allister is at times? Are there those structural failings can happen from time to time that would make Caicedo look silly in the way that I mentioned earlier, in terms of that can happen to Mac Allister? I think perhaps so. And the other alternative who's been suggested so far is obviously Andre at Fluminense. Now, he was a player that Liverpool looked at in the summer when they were rejigging the midfield, and a player that the club definitely liked and wanted to sign, but Fluminense were obviously pretty adamant that they wanted to keep him for the Copa de Libertadores run, which has obviously worked out brilliantly for them because they've gone on to win that tournament. I think he's been touted as a potential January addition to be used in that number 6 role. Now, the one thing I would question about that is, for starters, Liverpool don't look too light in midfield. I think, Thiago and Bajcetic have missed pretty much the entirety of the start of the season, but Liverpool haven't looked light in that position, which suggests that Andre was maybe seen as an alternative to someone else they signed during the summer window. And the other thing I would say is that about Andre and him being held up as this potential saviour, as an alternative to Mac Allister, is that we're frequently told about the player, and I can't vouch for this, I will admit, I'm no Brazilian football expert, but we are frequently told that he profiles very similarly to Thiago Alcantara. And the one thing I would say about that is, would you see Thiago Alcantara, or a player who plays the game in a very similar way, to be a huge step up in terms of what Alexis Mac Allister is offering in that holding midfield role? My shout would be not really. I don't think that is the profile Liverpool need. I think that if Liverpool are to sign another midfielder, despite the fact that they've got Thiago and Bajcetic hopefully coming back soon, I still think it has to be that out and out number 6, almost a Fabinho regen, someone who can do very, very similar things in terms of breaking up play, is ruthless in that position. Perhaps that can be Wataru Endo. Maybe he can emerge as a real option there, but if not, I think Liverpool need a really first team ready option there. And I don't think that Andre, and as I say, Caicedo, well, we know Caicedo's not going to be it because he's at Chelsea now, but I don't think Andre is maybe the saviour that's being made out in terms of that coming in to solve that position for Liverpool. Maybe they would be better sticking with Alexis Mac Allister, at least in the short term, until they can maybe find an out and out better option who is more like that Fabinho type. Now, one thing I will finish up on is the idea that I want to stress that, yes, there are improvements that Liverpool can make, and I think we've seen that in the play. It's not everything is perfect, despite Mac Allister coming across well in the numbers, as I've suggested, and maybe being a little bit underrated. There are elements of Liverpool's play that can be improved, but we do see, typically under Jurgen Klopp, we do see improvements over the season. This start of the season, his teams tend to find the feet. They still pick up a lot of points, but they're finding the feet, finding the way a little bit, and then all of a sudden they get on a real run when things start to click. And I think we could see that with Liverpool's midfield. I think that protection in front of Mac Allister can be improved. I think we'll see a little bit more of that. I think we'll see developments in that regard, and that will maybe make Mac Allister a little bit more comfortable in that role, make things a little bit easier, make it so he doesn't have to fight so many fires. And I think that will bring out the best of Alexis Mac Allister, because I will admit we've maybe not seen that yet, even though he's performing perhaps better than many would expect. But I think there's a lot more to come from him, and I think one thing you will finish on is that this is a good base from him to start from. He is playing better than we'd maybe thought he is playing. I think Liverpool can do more, and he can do more, but it's an exciting start to his Liverpool career. There is a lot more to come, but as I say, he's done well so far, better than we thought. And I'm really looking forward to see what more is to come from Alexis Mac Allister, and also this Liverpool midfield as it clicks and gets a little bit better at working together. Now, I'm going to wrap the video up there. Please let me know your thoughts on how Alexis Mac Allister's done so far. Maybe you disagree, maybe you think these numbers don't paint the perfect picture of how he's fitted into that number 6 role. Let me know in the comments. And as ever, I'm going to ask you to please like and subscribe, and I'll see you soon for another video.